Right, let's go back to our breaking news story now. Public Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordhan has announced the plans to revive SAA. To get some reaction on these developments, we're joined by aviation expert Desmond Latham. Thank you very much, sir, for your time. Now, we heard the news today. SAA has been a thorn in our side for quite a long time. Is it too early to celebrate?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, it took us out of left field there. It came from left field a bit. We weren't expecting a public-private partnership, but we were expecting some kind of deal to be done with an external aviation company of some sort. But in the end, we had two Southern African-based entities becoming part of this new consortium called Takatso, which is quite an interesting development here. So that has kind of surprised the industry, I think, quite a bit. So, I mean, it's too early to say right now the next steps. We're waiting to hear about the due diligence that both parties will conduct on each other, and also the details of the MOU, which are forthcoming.
And then, of course, there's the minister's reiterance of, SAA not needing government bailouts anymore. He had to repeat that quite a couple of times because, of course, South Africans were very annoyed by that part. But there's still that 14 billion rand that they still need to pump in so that the deal can actually go through.
Yeah, the creditors need to be paid, and the government has built up the government is the shareholder. By failing to deal with this effectively over a decade, has built up a large list of creditors, mainly international leasing companies who want to be paid in dollars. And that's still unclear about where the cash injection will come from there. In terms of the operations side of things, the government has taken over the debt, and it's not part of this new deal. So that's a bit of a relief for the new consortium, and the consortium apparently has just over 3 billion rand to pump into the airline, which it's going to need because pilots need to be retrained. They need to lease new aircraft. There's a whole long list of things that need to be done before a plane can take off or the routes can be serviced again. So there are many ifs and buts here. But the interesting thing to note is Gideon Novik's involvement, who, of course, launched Kulula years ago, and he retired, and now he's been brought back from retirement. So I think you have this strange situation where it's a South African solution to a particularly South African problem.
Explain to us about the 51 to 49%. That happening basically means that SAA is no longer really a government-owned entity. It's no longer really the responsibility of the government. But there's still that 49%. It's only a 2% difference. So explain to us what this will mean in terms of roles of government compared to private.
Well, there's a couple of other things that need to be mentioned there. The first thing is that there's the SAA Pilots Association still have legal cases pending against the airline. And concerning the pilots that have been selected to go forward, the 88 pilots apparently out of 380 odd that will be hired or rehired in some form by the new airline. And that's not concluded in the court. So I'm not kind of certain about what that part of the process would bring. But beyond that, the 51% means the chairperson and most of the members of the board will be independent of government, we hope, or will be at least representative of this consortium. Up to now, the board has been part of a cadre deployment policy that the ruling party has had for years, where the chairperson, for example, Dudu Myeni, was declared delinquent director, had no skills whatsoever in running an airline, and he was somehow squeezed into the position of chair. So that's not going to happen going forward. Government's not going to be able to force its board members in its majority and then, of course, make those kind of suspicious decisions that we saw over the years concerning tenders and so on. So that's the first big thing that needs to be said. The second is that for investors into this new vehicle, having skills in airlines is a very specific science and an economic and business skill. It's like nothing else you can imagine. And that's going to be of interest to investors, especially the creditors who may be in two minds about how they get to cope with requests for more loans and so on from this consortium. So these are positive developments overall. The negative, of course, is going to come from unions. We're already seeing the trolls on social media who obviously lined themselves up to dismiss this as a sellout of South Africa's national interests and so on. So it's going to be quite interesting for the ANC and the ruling party to deal with, and of course, Public Works Minister.
Right, let's go back to, the ANC, how it's going to deal with this and the trolls. This goes back basically to the confidence that people have lost in SAA and other state-owned entities. And one of the due diligence that you were speaking about is the evaluation of subsidiaries such as the South African Airways Technical, which also is a whole nightmare on its own, state capture, etc. So, the confidence is also quite low. That's why you see those trolls.
Yes, this is one of the unexplained things through this Q&A. I've just watched it, and they skirted that discussion to some extent. The look into how the operation works, for example, on airships. They are getting 200 million odd of the bailout. There are 1,500 workers there, 1,500. They're going to put, government's going to be put under pressure along with this consortium. So I'm expecting some kind of action on the ground there. In terms of SAA Technical, I mean, this is a huge skilled section of our economy that's hidden from view to most people who fly in airplanes, which are maintained at a very, very high level. And the skills required there involve a lot of science and a lot of exams. So getting into the top level of technical is a life career that is similar to a pilot. So how exactly technical will work with some of the clients having left the party, so to speak, such as Kulula Kome, which now gets its planes serviced elsewhere. That's going to be a big question going forward. But of course, SAA cannot really fly without some kind of maintenance and deal with technical. So this was not answered exactly what's going to happen with the layouts. You can imagine if this consortium arrives and starts retrenching workers, what kind of pressure government could come under following this decision.
All right, David Latham, thank you very much for your time, sir. He is, of course, an aviation expert on that breaking story on the SAA update.